Alright, here's a lap guide of Daytona circa 2007 for season 2017 week 1 in the Camel GT series. This is my first time doing this, so we'll just kind of see how this goes, and I'll try to explain best I can what I'm doing as I go through each corner here on the lap and the driving line. Before we do that, here's the lap first. Alright, so just going to go back and play through each corner here and try to explain what's going on a little bit. So I'm going to just move up to turn 1. And this might be easier to kind of show from. Probably need to adjust this just a bit. Alright, so what I'm trying to do here on turn 1 is I'm trying to get the car over to the right hand side as best as possible. I'm using the light here as kind of a marker for as a reference point for where I want to start turning back in. But the main thing here is to straighten out the car in the braking zone as best as you can. So if you look at from cockpit view here, we'll see that by the time I get on the brakes, which is, let's see here, right about here. So I guess the braking point could be the green cone or just before the green cone. If we look at it from the cockpit view, what you'll see is that I've kind of tried to straighten the car out right here, and what I'm really doing is just aiming on the left-hand side here as I get the braking done. Brake goes right up to about 50-60%. And then starts to trail off from there. So at this point, once I've got the car down to speed, I'm trying to get as much off the brakes as possible before turning in. You can see I'm starting to turn in. Braking's going to start to bleed off to about 10%ish or so. And of course, trying to hug the left-hand side as best as possible because you want to be able to open up steering and get back on throttle as soon as possible. So you'll see at this point I'm going to be trying to straighten the wheel out, feeding throttle in right around 50% throttle right here, and then getting up to full throttle once I've got the steering and the car, the weight of the car is kind of balanced back out. Just going to touch the right and left hand curbing here as I get up to the next corner. And you'll see here I'm getting the car again as far left as I can just to give myself as much room to turn. I don't know if this is absolutely necessary. I've seen some different lines taken through this corner here, but for me this works, at least with the setup that I have and I'll share for this. This works well for me. But you'll see that I'm just kind of hug the left hand side, And then again, braking pretty hard. Most of the hard braking zones, I'm around 50 to 60% in braking, just to the point of lock. I could probably get a little bit more out of it than that, but trying to be safe with it as well. So for this corner, I don't really have a reference for braking. A lot of corners, I don't really think about reference points. I try to just develop them through repetition and feeling what the car is capable of. Sometimes I do if I'm having trouble with a specific corner, a higher speed corner. But it looks like in this case, I'm braking just before the pole here. So that could be a good reference point, or the 200. And again, I'm not going to be turning a whole lot, obviously, until I've gotten the car slowed down. You can see right around here. One of the things you'll see me do in this corner, and I think in a few others, is there's going to be a little bit of trail braking because I didn't quite slow the car enough, and I'm trying to help rotate the car. So you'll see the braking come off here. Cars turn in. I'm actually giving it just a little bit of throttle, probably just getting a feel for the balance of the car there. But then you're going to see me tapping the brakes again lightly. So I'm just kind of alternating between a real light throttle and braking inputs to try to get the car balanced. Coming up close to this, I typically don't touch this curb. I try to avoid it, get as close to it as possible. And then at this point, I'm looking to the outside and trying to get the car straightened out as soon as possible to get on throttle again as soon as possible. This corner is probably, this one and one other is one of the two corners where the car has a tendency to really oversteer on throttle, so you've got to be extra careful here. So taking a look here, you'll see I don't get back to full throttle until right about there, and you can see I'm kind of aiming to the left. The wheel is straightened out, but I'm at full throttle, and I'm making sure that the car has grip and that I'm not going to spin it before I actually steer away from this. So, whatever technique works well for you. In my case, I'm just trying to get the car to full throttle as soon as possible, and even though I'm aiming left here, which looks a little odd, that just helps me get to that point without the spin, losing traction. I moved over a bit late. Normally I try to get over to the right a little bit sooner, and again, just trying to hug the right-hand side as best as possible. And then just cutting across and touching the curbing here on the left, full throttle. So in this corner here, this is the other corner where you can really have some throttle you can have some oversteer when you're on throttle on the corner exit. My line here is not quite what I have been hitting as far as for my better laps. What I have been doing is kind of aiming toward the left-hand side of this building, and then by the time I'm done braking, I'm further to the right-hand side of the building. So the building has been kind of a reference point for where I want to get the car pointed. Now again, this is another corner where a lot of lines I've seen taken and it can work differently, can go much wider and try to carry more speed around the corner. In my case, when I try to carry more speed at a wider radius, I tend to lose traction more often, so I'm kind of doing a little bit more of a medium approach. Aiming right around the middle of the line here, and then you'll see me braking here right about where the concrete and the cones start here. So that's right around, that's a good braking point, easy to remember. Again, hitting brakes pretty hard initially, and then of course the technique there is to kind of trail off the brakes as you get closer, and of course that helps prevent lockup. Finding that point, that optimal point in traction, is important at every point along corner entry, mid-corner, and corner exit. You want to find where that optimal traction is. This is a corner where I found it's probably most challenging to find that right balance. Again, you can see me tapping brake and throttle a little bit here. I'm trying to get the car balanced. I'm trying to get a feel for the car and where its optimal grip point is here. And you kind of have to treat this like a double apex. So apex 1, of course, here is the curbing to the right. then you're gonna swing wide a little bit, and then apex 2 is on right around this side of the grass. You don't have to treat it like a double apex. This is what I'm doing here, and it's worked well for me. Because what I really want to do, again, is get the car a lot of rotation right here. You could actually treat the apex as being somewhere in the middle, literally like right here in the middle of the road, as your apex if you wanted to, but that's kind of hard to spot. You can see that's where I'm getting most of my turning and throttle right around that point done. And again, this is where you're gonna oversteer and spin if you throttle too soon while you're still turning. You'll see I'm still not quite full, and then really not until it feels like the car's straightened out and balanced that I can get back to full throttle. Probably could have a little sooner here, but again, you're going to be cautious and you're going to get a feel for that. All right, so gradually moving back over to the right-hand side. In this one, I typically brake just before the line ends here, or even a little sooner than that. It looks like I'm braking actually a fair bit sooner than that here. I didn't keep the car over to the right like I would normally like to do here. Kind of gradually moved over a little bit. But that was a pretty smooth corner. Not a whole lot going on with the car. It got around the corner pretty smoothly. And actually, this is another point where you're going to see a lot of oversteer, a lot of spins on throttle. So what I usually look for here is trying to get the car parallel with the line here, at least my my angle of the line. I went wide, but I'm going to try to straighten the car out kind of parallel with that line, so I got a feel for which direction the car is facing before I get back to full throttle. Now you can kind of aim for coming high up on the bankment here. In fact, you almost have to, depending on how you approach this. If you start turning too much and too early, this is the point often where you're going to spin, and the rear end will come out on you a little bit. I've seen it happen right here as well, earlier in the corner, where just getting back to throttle too much and too soon. You can see I'm right around 30-40% throttle, and then 100% throttle once I can see I'm aiming to get up onto the bank there. So anyway, that's something to watch for. It's another trouble area. It takes a bit of practice to get a feel for that one. All right, moving up to the next corner here. For this, I use the light here on the right as a reference point for braking. I find, again, reference points most helpful on some of the higher speed corners like this. And so I usually brake right when I cross that. Braking a little harder here because, again, it's a higher speed corner, getting up to about 60%. I'm trying not to turn in too soon, but getting an eye out for the curbing here on the left. And I think in this lap, I take about the most amount of curbing you can before you get an off track on all 4 sections of this corner. So you can see you can actually get slightly into the grass there, slightly into the grass there, even more so here, and just a tad right here. This is where I think most off tracks are going to happen. And literally, that's I think the limit on what you can take there. From a cockpit view, it actually doesn't look like I'm taking quite as much, at least from my perspective. So when I played this back, I was surprised I was taking more than I thought I was. So taking a look at it from the cockpit view, starting from the braking point. So you can see I'm kind of just trying to aim to kind of, I don't know, you could look at it as straddling the curb a little bit, straddling left and right hand side. You is a good entry angle. And then coming back, and you can look at it as kind of clipping the grass as it comes off the exit. And again, clipping the grass a little bit on entry of that corner. And then this one as well. You got to be real careful with that though, because I literally pushed it, I think, to the limit there, and I actually typically don't take quite that much curbing, just for safety and because this isn't necessarily the fastest for getting back on throttle. There's a little bit of a quick blip of throttle there to kind of help balance the car. So as you come in, I downshift into third prior. You'll see a blip right there on downshift. And then as I come just into the curbing, there's another quick blip of the throttle just to kind of help balance the car. I don't know if it's necessary, but it seems to help me, and I typically do that. Slightly getting on the throttle just a little bit here. Just tap and brake and throttle both, actually, just a little bit. And then at this point, I feel like I'm a little far to the right, and I'd like to be full throttle a little sooner. You can see I don't get to full throttle until right about there. Let's take a look at the chase. So that's full throttle right there. I feel like it's better to get back to full throttle closer to this apex here on this corner, if possible. So if I wasn't quite taking so much, tough to get. You want to carry as much speed through this as possible, which is crucial for the bus stop here. But I'm real shallow, and because of this line here that's being so shallow, I really can't get on full throttle as soon as I'd like, because I'm going to get some spin on the grass. So I feel like I need to be getting a little further to the left, and then coming back and getting to full throttle like by here. But again, there's not running one wing in this setup, and I actually have been running two wing in a more recent setup and still getting equal lap times. Feels a little safer. This one was with one wing, and I think with my two wing, I feel like I have just a little bit better control in the corners, and that may be the case here. So that's pretty much it for the lap. Not much else to say here as that finishes out. So let's see, that was a 134.2. So whoever watched this, hope you find it helpful. Take care.